We're rolling.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Holics podcast. We are in the middle of our Major League Baseball mini-series where we are breaking down the fantasy implications of each and every Major League roster. So today we are talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates. This is going to be our longest episode to date. Lots of fantasy relevance here. So my name is Jordan Jaika. I'm here with my co-host Rydawg. What's going on?
What's going on, J-Dog? Get to talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates, and we can't say that with a straight face, and we tried.
We were just saying, I think that this is going to be the shortest one overall. There's a few guys, actually, I don't mind that I think are sleepers here, but overall, not much to talk about. But if you don't already, before I get too far, like us on Facebook at Fantasy Holics, Twitter, Fantasy Holics1, subscribe on YouTube. That's important. We appreciate that support. So let's just roll into their lineup. Kicking it off, leading it off for them is probably the best leadoff man in all of baseball, I would say. They have Adam Frazier as their second baseman. My notes on him is he will probably score some runs, I guess, because he's in the lineup, and they're probably going to have to score at some point this season. I did read that a few years back he did have the fastest home run trot, so they might lead the league in something, so that's pretty cool. But besides that, I'm going to skip over Adam Frazier because there's nothing to talk about. But I'll hop into the second guy. He's probably one of the only guys I'm kind of comfortable drafting this year in the outfield for them is Bryan Reynolds, who they have batting in that 2 spot. He's going around pick 165 right now. He actually had a really successful rookie season last year, kind of out of nowhere for a lot of people. Not really a big prospect or a name that many people were aware of. He had 15 home runs, 80 runs scored, 70 RBIs. And a fun fact is he's never batted under 300 at any level in the minor leagues or in the majors. He batted over 300 last year as well. So I think he's a guy, if you can get him as your 5th outfielder, maybe 4th. I mean, if he bats 300, scores some runs, steals some bases, I actually like him. And I think guys like this get overlooked a lot just because they're not big prospects, kind of in the same mold as Jeff McNeil. You know, he's hit at every single level, but you're like, yeah, he's not a prospect. He's not a prospect. And then all of a sudden they get to the majors and he's still hitting 300. And, I take note of that. So I'll take him, in that mid to late round of round 16, 17, 18 in the draft. And if I get a guy that bats 300 at that point in the draft, I'm pretty happy.
I agree. I mean, I didn't even know that fact about Reynolds until you told me. Until you just said just now. So, I mean, that's impressive. If I can get that out of my utility guy or my 4th or 5th outfielder, I mean, I'm going to take that to the bank because most guys you take as your studs, no one's going to hit 300. That's rare in general. So,
yeah. Especially in today's game, there's a lot of swing and miss. He doesn't swing and miss a ton, so he's a little unique in today's game, so I like him. Batting third in that lineup is Gregory Polanco. He's had a very long history of injuries. He's shown potential, back when he was younger, coming up. He was a big name and big prospect when he first came up with the Pirates. One of those guys that kind of let the organization down a little bit. If he does stay healthy, he's probably, he can hit 15 home runs, 15 steals. He's going really late in drafts. If he does get drafted, he's on average pick 255. So if you're picking 255 players, maybe I'm taking him. But most likely he's on the waiver wire. In that lineup, not a ton of potential, and I don't really see him doing much.
Yeah, I think when Marte left for Arizona, I think that kind of put the nail in the coffin in the whole offense. Polanco, like you said, he was a highly touted prospect once upon a time. Injuries and whatnot got to him. So, I mean, I'm going to take Reynolds over him, but I'm not too excited about either guy. I mean, I guess the 300 stat for Reynolds is, it's appealing, but other than that, it's eh.
Yeah, and that's why the ADP, for going back to Reynolds quickly, that's why the ADP is interesting to me, because I've been in a lot of drafts where I've taken him, in the 20th round in a 12-team league. So, you're talking like pick 220. And I think it's just for that because, you're like, man, he's hit 300 at every level. People don't even know. And I'm like, okay, I'll take that as, my last bench guy. And I like guys like that keep getting people don't they underestimate him. So I like that. But hopping into the next guy in the lineup, batting cleanup for Josh Bell, who had a huge season last year, 37 home runs, 116 RBIs. I've seen a lot of different sites, and we actually had a guy that wrote an article on this as well, as Josh Bell as a bust. He's currently going pick 96, ninth first baseman off the board. Any thoughts on Josh Bell this year?
I've never really had much thoughts about him, to be honest. I mean, he is the only somewhat fantasy relevant guy on this whole team. So, with that being said, it's tough. He has no help around him. Last year, he had a tremendous first half. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like his first half stats tripled his second half stats. Like, he was real bad. I mean, he was batting below 230, I believe, in the second half. It was horrible. I mean, I'm staying away from him. And we talked about in previous episodes where if you miss out on the top three, Freeman, Alonso, Bellinger, and if somehow you don't get either Rizzo or Goldschmidt, I'm just going to wait longer at this point. I'm not excited for this guy. I'd rather take Olsen from the Athletics, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think Olsen goes right around the same pick as him, maybe a few after, I believe. But I actually kind of like Josh Bell, and I know that lineup is kind of poor. But if he's coming off the board as the 9th or 10th first baseman, I mean, if you're in a 12-team league, 12 first basemen have to start. So if you say that if Josh Bell is a back-end starting first baseman, I mean, I think that's kind of fair, honestly. If he hits 35 home runs, and the thing about it is I was looking a little bit at his advanced stats, too. A lot of his exit velocity when he hit the ball, his launch angle, his barrel percentage, everything actually was very high compared to the major league average. And when I look at that, his numbers weren't fluky last year. When he was on, he showed improvements in his swing. So when I see that, I'll take, if you already mentioned it though, if you miss out on those top few guys, I'm taking Bell or Olsen. I'd probably prefer Olsen as well, but I think either one of those guys, they're both starting first baseman if you're in a 12-team league. So right around pick 100, am I excited about that value? No. Is it about right? Yeah, I mean, probably.
Let me ask you another question while we're on the first base topic.
Yeah.
Where's DJ LeMahieu being versus ADP at? Because he has first, second, and third eligibility, and I believe he's going around that time. I'm taking him, and I'd be much more excited over a guy like LeMahieu over someone like Bell, who you have question marks regarding. Yep. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah, LeMahieu's going around pick 80, so he's about 15, 20 picks ahead of him.
Okay. I mean, yeah, so if you miss out on Rizzo and Goldschmidt, you better hope you can get LeMahieu, in my opinion at least, or if not,
yeah.
Why not wait around for like an Eric Hosmer? I mean, at least you know what you're getting there.
Right. Yeah, no, and LeMahieu, especially in the Yankees lineup, I mean, he's going to put up numbers. So in that multi-position eligible, I've talked about it before. I don't weigh that in a ton, but it still has value, and especially more so for the second base portion of that. If he's your starting second baseman, you're doing all right.
Agreed. Or if he's your starting third baseman, you're doing all right. Because like we said, third, first, and second, it seems like after the first 10, 12 guys, it gets tough.
Yeah, I agree with that. Batting fifth for him is Colin Moran, playing third base. Kind of underrated last year. He doesn't hit a ton of home runs in that position. He did drive in 80 runs last year, had 80 RBIs. There's not as many guys hitting in front of him right now, so that production, and not to mention, we'll talk about a certain third base prospect who I believe you like later on, but Moran most likely will not be starting there the entire season, but he's been solid. Behind him is Kevin Newman, their shortstop. He's currently going pick 213. I have him in a couple deep bench leagues just because he had a 300 average last year. He had 18 steals in 130 games. So if you need a little bit of steal production or you have a really deep bench, potentially just because of the speed there, I might roster him. I wouldn't be crazy about it, but I mean, these are some super deep leagues that you and I are in.
Oh, sure. And you set shortstops deep, so I mean, a guy like Kevin Newman, if he falls, you might as well take him.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, the only thing with him is, he's in a bad spot in a bad lineup. When you're batting sixth, the guys batting behind him are their catcher, Jacob Stallings, and Jared Dyson batting last. That's a tough spot. It's hard to score many runs when you're in that position, but
I mean, half these guys people don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Talking about Pee-wee players at this rate.
We might as well. I mean, my first year in Little League, I batted 260, so I don't know where that puts me in the Pirates lineup.
That gets you a starting spot.
I might be pretty close. So, yeah, nothing to talk about there. Catcher, Jacob Stallings. Jared Dyson's last in the lineup. Yeah. If you have a super deep league, I may be Jared Dyson stole 30 bases last year, so if you're super desperate for steals, I mean, I guess you could do worse, but batting eighth in the Pirates lineup, you can't do much worse.
I mean, is he just going to steal base just so whoever they have pitching for him is going to hit him?
I guess. I mean, yeah, Jared Dyson to first, steal second, pitcher bunts him over, Adam Frazier gets an out, and then that's the end of that.
No hope.
Oh, gosh. Okay, I'm going to move over to their rotation, which is even worse than their lineup. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this is the worst rotation in all of baseball. Their ace, quote unquote, I use quotations there. Their ace is Chris Archer, who honestly I would take as one of my last picks in the draft. He had a really bad ERA last year, but I do like guys with really high K rates. And even though that his ERA was super high, I mean, he still strikes out over 200 batters if he gets his innings in. So if that's one of your last picks, I think you can do worse. His control has always been horrendous. That's always been what he struggled with throughout his career. But, I'd take a chance on him with my last pick. And, if he can bring his whip down a little bit and even show a little better control, if he has a 4.5 ERA, even low fours with a high K rate, I mean, you can do worse with your last pick.
I agree. And since when he left Tampa Bay and went to Baltimore, I think Baltimore said, yeah, let us get a hold of Archer. We'll ruin his career, just like they do all the pitchers. You really think about it. Before Archer, they had Ubaldo Jimenez. Yeah. And, I mean, Ubaldo Jimenez, that poor dude, he pitched a no-hitter, or was it a perfect game? It was one of the two with the Rockies. And then once he got to Baltimore, that dude just fell off. So there's a trend going, and people, I guess, are kind of noticing it now. And you went to say this might be one of the worst rotations. I mean, I could pick three teams out of a hat. I would go with the Tigers, Pirates, and Orioles. Yeah. Any of those three teams, and I'm like, okay, I got the Orioles. I can make a case for any of those teams being the worst rotation in the league. And
I would say, at least with the Tigers, they have a ton of young pitchers coming up. Probably next year, probably not this year, probably next year. Their rotation in 2 years could flip from one of the worst to one of the best, I think.
Oh yeah, especially with Casey Mize. But people are really, they're really starting to get leery on Casey Mize's his health. But I mean, he's still him and Gore. They're 1A and 1B pitching prospects, and that's a story for another time.
Yeah, for sure. And then going through the rest of their rotation, I'm just going to say some names here. I don't really know if they play baseball or not, but I'm assuming they do. They're listed on the depth chart. Joe Musgrove is their second guy. Number 3 is Steven Brault. Number 4 is Trevor Williams. I have Yuck next to that. And then number 5 is Mitch Keller, who actually is a huge prospect. I'll talk about him for a minute here. He was one of the top prospects in baseball. He pitched 48 innings last year. He had 63 Ks, so once again, K rate's high. But let's dive into the fun numbers. He had a 7.18 ERA, a 1.83 WHIP. I mean, he got knocked. I mean, he walked guys. Guys hit him hard. I mean, he got absolutely annihilated in the majors. And the only thing that worries me about that is not only that obviously the performance is poor, but for a young guy, he's 23. I mean, that really messes with your psyche. I mean, when your first taste of the bigs, you absolutely get demolished. sometimes it's hard to deal with that failure. So I think it'll be telling to see how he does this year. If he has another really horrendous year, I think that he might fall off the map pretty quickly. I'll still give him the full year. He's going as a dart throw late in drafts, and I think that's fine, especially because of his pedigree as a top prospect. But this is going to go one of two ways. I mean, he's going to turn it around, or after the end of the season, he could be out of the league pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, he's in a tough, heavy hitting offense. So, I don't see much from Mitch Keller. I mean, his control is god awful, but I mean, he's miraculously somehow making people miss. So, I mean, good on the kid. Outside of Trevor Williams and Joe Musgrove, I didn't recognize any of the other pitcher that you mentioned. I'd never even heard of that guy or seen him on any streaming at all. I liked Musgrove in Houston. I think his problem was he couldn't stay healthy. But I mean, I don't like him here at all.
He's as a number 2 pitcher.
Pass. And Mitch Keller, I mean, I just wish he was on a different team. Pittsburgh doesn't know how to handle their pitchers. Neither does Baltimore, or a lot of teams. They don't know how to develop pitching prospects, and it's a shame.
Yeah, and then their closer is Keanu Kayla this year. He's going around pick 180. He's going to have limited opportunities, but I said his name, so he's on the team just so everybody's aware.
No one gets left out, and everyone gets a participation trophy.
Exactly. I'm going to be mailing you the trophy, so make sure you watch out, everybody. That's including Steven Brault if you're out there. I don't know how long you're going to be in the rotation, but I support you. Moving over to their impact prospects, so there's a few guys here. And they're most likely going to get an opportunity because the lineup is pretty weak. The Pirates overall, though, they only have the 15th ranked system in all of Major League Baseball. Very top-heavy right now with a few top 100 guys. Mitch Keller is going to be graduating shortly. We already talked about him. A few other guys that I'll mention before I move on to Hayes, and I'll let you talk about him. Jared Olivia is one of their top 5 prospects. Not in the top 100, but top 5 for the Pirates. He's an elite steal guy, so he's consistently had low or high 30 to low 40 steals in the minors. So when he does get called up, he's a name to look at just because he's going to put up elite steal numbers. And if you're looking for that, he might be a guy you can snag. O'Neal Cruz is one of their top prospects as well. He's probably their shortstop of the future. He's more defensive minded, but the same thing. He has a little bit of potential to steal some bases, and he showed some potential as he's moved up the minors. But lastly, we will end with Brian Hayes. So what do you think of Hayes there, Rydawg?
High ceiling, high potential, wrong team. And that's for all these young prospects. It's a shame that you have to get developed by the worst developers and developing coaching staff in all of baseball, in my opinion. The whole coaching staff just blows. And it's horrible because you really think about it. I mean, Garrett Cole's out here. He's the best pitcher in baseball, and he was with the Pirates once upon a time, and they just couldn't develop him for anything, it seems like. And then he goes to Houston for 1 year, and he kills it. He's Cy Young. He's 300 Ks. He's the whole damn shit. So,
yeah,
that just goes to show what they're doing out there in that dog shit town of Pittsburgh. So,
it's a beautiful stadium, though.
Oh, I agree. PNC Park's very beautiful. The coaching staff isn't.
Yeah, two things on the opposite side of the spectrum. I personally, my opinion on Hayes, based on what I've seen, I've heard he's had a lot of raw power and batting practice that really hasn't translated to the game yet. So I guess that's something to keep an eye on. He's pretty highly regarded as the best defensive third baseman in all of minor league baseball. So just on his defensive ability alone, he's going to have a spot in the majors. So if he's able to develop that power, maybe he's a guy to keep an eye on. But definitely not someone that I'd be excited to in a redraft league, especially. I'm not going to be picking him up when he's in the majors, but dynasty leagues, he's worth the prospect spot.
Oh, for sure. He's 1 year, 5 or 10 prospect spots in the dynasty league, and that's how I would have him.
Any other notes that you want to make on the Pirates?
That's it. Go Pirates. Go
I think
Pittsburgh.
that's the most that I ever plan on speaking about the Pirates. So
Thank you.
that was a good time. So that's all that we have right now for the Pirates. So this is the 10th episode of our MLB mini series. Once again, tune in to the Fantasy Holics podcast on YouTube and make sure that you subscribe. We have lots of baseball and football content, and we're going to be coming out with some NBA, NHL, and other sport content in the future. Make sure you like us on Facebook and Twitter at FantasyHolics1. That's all we have. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
And we love Pittsburgh. Don't worry, guys.